All right, guys, we've got Andy here. Thanks for joining us, Andy. And this is our final nutrition class of our 6-week wellness challenge. And I wanted to wrap this all up to discuss supplements a little bit, or at least trying to navigate the world of supplements. It's a huge industry, and I think that there's a lot you can be sucked into. There's some things that surely could contribute to health, but I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this topic, maybe as an intro, and then we can have a bigger discussion when we have a big group to kind of review certain like specific supplements. So I'm going to screen share here. I did put together a little PowerPoint again. I just think that's a nice visual to have here. So I'm going to start slideshow. How do I do this? Hang with me, guys. Slideshow. Okay, cool. So again, I just pieced this together fairly briefly, but I think it'll be helpful for certain touch points on this discussion. But to define what a dietary supplement is, so basically, it's a product intended to, and this is key, supplement the diet. Not replace the diet, that bears or contains one or more of the following ingredients. So it either has to be a vitamin, a mineral, an amino acid, herb, or some sort of botanical, or it can be a dietary substance used to supplement the diet by increasing total dietary intake, like a meal replacement. It can also be, a supplement could also be considered a concentrate, metabolite, constituent, extract, or combination of any of the ingredients that just described. And it's intended for ingestion in the form of usually capsules, powders, soft gels, and it's not represented as a conventional food or as a sole item of a meal or diet. So even like goos or gels or shot blocks, like those, well, maybe shot blocks would be but like certain sports nutrition products are not technically considered supplements. So it's usually in that capsules, soft gels, or powder form. So supplements are also considered, when it comes to performance, which I think, especially with our Fit to Recover group, I think oftentimes when I hear people asking about supplements, it's usually for ergogenic effects, meaning performance enhancing effects. So, in terms of, whether or not they're safe, most things that you can get over the counter in terms of dietary supplements, they're safe taken as directed. But you get into problems, and we'll discuss this more in the next slides, is that the products might not contain the substances as shown on the supplement facts label. So it's easy to think you're consuming a supplement and you're either getting a very small amount of what you're actually thinking you're purchasing, or you're getting you're getting additional things tied in with that. Like I think there was some exposed supplement on the news a couple of years ago, but it was like let's say it was an antioxidant. Let's say it's like a turmeric supplement. Well, the majority of that pill, like 90% or maybe more than that, was just like rice powder, which is kind of like a filling for a lot of those capsules. And then, it only contained a very small percent of the actual substance that the consumers were thinking they were getting. So there's a lot of unregulation, which I'll get to in the next slides. And athletes or active individuals kind of have this thought process or concept, and I'd say probably more adults have this too, but if something is good for you, then the more the better. So we can, it's never this like, oh, I should take things in moderation. It's like, okay, well, if X, Y, and Z is good for your health, then 10 times that amount is going to be 10 times as good for your health as, that smaller dose. So we usually fall victim to that oftentimes. Oops. Okay. So, and to discuss kind of like where I think a lot of people get their nutrition information from, these are some of the statistics from at least like 2018. So most Americans are getting a lot of their nutrition information from TVs and magazines. But you'll notice on here, radio, family, friends, books, internet, most of these individuals, even doctors, they're not, none of these sources qualify them to, or mean that they're qualified to give sound nutrition information. I think, your registered dietitians, like that is their job to stay up to date on the most current evidence-based research with regard to nutrition. Even doctors, which, you see a lot of books written by doctors, and even, there's maybe one or two nutrition classes in, for medical students. And, so that their doctor status doesn't give them the credentials to speak about, all types of different diets or nutrition supplements. So it's easy to get caught up in that. And it's just important to know that oftentimes there's a lot of misinformation from non-credible sources. So we're going to talk a lot about nutritional quackery. And I think, by nutritional quackery, what I mean by that is a lot of these nutritional claims that are bogus, or that, are just trying to trick you into buying that product. It's more from a marketing standpoint than actually providing you with good quality evidence-backed research and products that align with that. So, it's often misinformation based. So there's a lot of worthless products out there that are heavily promoted. The infomercials, the glitzy brochures and magazines. The supplement industry is actually $25 billion industry. So it's incredible. And unfortunately, the FDA does not have, there's no evaluation of product effectiveness when it comes to supplements. And so we really don't, you could buy anything and it could claim anything. And, it doesn't have to back those claims. The research doesn't have to back those claims. So I know I already said this, the $26 billion business, a quarter of the supplements made like worldwide are actually in Utah, which I thought was an interesting fact. And a lot of the targets populations that supplements cater to, of course, your elderly, trying to prevent all these things or keep individuals young. We've also got, a lot of weight loss products. So if you're overweight or obese individuals definitely are a targeted population when it comes to supplements. And then active individuals and athletes. There's a lot of products that promote some sort of physical enhancement or performance enhancement. And so those are kind of like the three really big populations that are easy targets for the supplement industry. And then there's very little legal recourse when it comes to supplements. So again, if what they're promoting isn't actually true, there's really not much that can be done against that company. So in terms of recognizing quackery, when it comes to this quackery, I think it's important to ask yourself a couple questions. And, this is where it's important to do a little bit of homework on your end. But even if you're not willing to do the research, or it's a little bit too much, there's a couple things we can ask ourselves. So one, does it promise quick improvement in health or sports? I think that's the biggest thing, is just like with weight loss or a healthy lifestyle, if it promises anything quick, we all know that shortcuts are not really, there's no such thing as shortcuts when it comes to health and wellness. And so if something is promising that, you can likely know that that's probably not something you should take very seriously. You should ask yourself, does it contain some sort of magical ingredient or special formula? That's sounds complex, but like, oh yeah, that could be valid. That sounds really sciencey. I'm gonna fall victim to that. Oftentimes if a supplement's marketed by celebrities, big personalities, sports players. Why does that sound weird? Sports players, sports stars. Anyway, like those, if they're endorsed by them, oftentimes, it's a big sell, but again, it doesn't speak to the effectiveness of the product. And then does it exaggerate a single truth about an ingredient? Oftentimes, especially like we get into these superfoods, and while, there's plenty of foods out there that are going to offer us pretty wonderful benefits when it comes to health, if one supplement is just over exaggerating what a single nutrient or a single food item can do, oftentimes it's a little bit it's a little bit beyond what that ingredient can actually do. Because we all know, like, if there was one food that was just the best for you and could cure or resolve all your health issues, everyone would be taking that by now. So it's always the combination, the big picture combination of multiple health foods and from different areas. Does it question the integrity of the scientific or medical establishment? So that's, a big one in terms of, what studies is this product citing? What is this a reputable manufacturing company? I think a lot of times supplements are actually made in like like people's basements, like in slapping a label on something and putting it in a canister, and you'd be surprised how that can sell with very little credibility and regulation. And then, does the person or magazine who recommends it also sell it? Is there like, what is it called when like a conflict of interest there? Like, obviously the people who are backing it are also the ones selling it. And then the biggest one, it kind of goes with that first one, promising the quick improvement. Like, is the claim too good to be true? Does it seem like it'll magically resolve all your problems? And if that's the case, it usually is too good to be true. So, again, to kind of look out for some of these things, bent or half truths. Like I said, too good to be true. If it's very testimonial and anecdotally based in terms of, I lost 45 pounds or I lost, 6 inches off my waist. Usually when testimonials are backing the marketing, that's usually because that's pretty much all they have to go off of. A lot of studies that are, that apparently promote or show significant effects using certain studies are unpublished studies or uncited studies, meaning that they, didn't pass the criteria to actually have a peer-reviewed study. So it's not, it takes away that credibility. Oftentimes there's buzzwords and pseudo-medical jargon associated, just all these like insane fat burner, or like, I'm kind of blanking on buzzwords, but like the big ones that kind of catch your attention and really put that wow factor in that label. We already talked about secret formulas, promising quick, dramatic, miraculous results, and then, missing credible sources to back them. Okay. So unfortunately, what promotes a lot of this, this quackery, this nutritional quackery, is that, as I mentioned earlier, there's no FDA regulation when it comes to the dietary supplements. So that means, there's no tests for the effectiveness of a supplement that's required. No proof of safety is required either. And then there are no manufacturing standards that are required. So basically anyone could put together a supplement and sell it, and it would be, that would be technically legal. So, and you're allowed to put health claims on the labels that, aren't in fact credible or aren't in fact, actually backed by sound evidence. So, and I don't want to harp too much on this, but I think it's important, just because the supplements are such a huge industry, and if there was, a class of like 10 people here, you'd probably have 10 different supplements that, people are asking about. So I wanted to harp on more of here's the background on some supplements, and here's kind of what we're weighing one against the other. But I think it is important to think about the risks and benefits. So there's definitely, things like multivitamins or, individualized vitamin supplements, and minerals. The risk to benefit, the risks are probably not very high for that. A lot of our water soluble vitamins, which are most vitamins, those are going to be excreted in our urine if if our body doesn't need quite the amount that we're consuming. And so, the risk is, it's not like it's going to be stored at toxic levels in our body. But then there's other supplements that pose greater risks. And then, there's also the cost aspect of this too. So it should kind of say like risks, benefits, and costs, because a lot of times people end up throwing a lot of money down the drain to buy certain supplements that they think are having a profound effect on their nutrition or their body composition, or as just a part of their health journey, when in reality, it's just money down the drain. So like I said, in terms of the benefits, sometimes that can lead to performance benefits, sometimes that can lead to increased health, but oftentimes the risks outweigh the benefits, I'd say most times rather than not. There's definitely, obviously it's not regulated, but there's also a huge risk for contamination and impurities, like a lot of heavy metals, bacteria growth, even fecal matter have been found in like some certain randomly tested supplements out there. Mislabeling, so whether they fail to include certain ingredients or they just are very vague about the amounts. Like proprietary blends are big. You kind of hear that a lot, and I think everyone's like, "Ooh, it's a proprietary blend. Like that sounds fancy," when really proprietary blends allow the company to not put the specific amounts of what the ingredients that they're claiming to use in the supplement. So when they're not including those specific amounts, you could be getting very, very little of what they're promising and a lot of just filler ingredients. And then, there's also the risks of side effects for certain supplements. You can test positive on drug tests. I don't know if that's, that could certainly be applied. I think it's more so from an athlete standpoint. If there's, certain rules you have to abide by in that sport. And then we talked about costs. Like a lot of times you're spending a pretty penny on supplements when in reality it should be spent on, the actual nutrition and the foundation of your everyday nutrition intake. So let's see. Okay, so I did want to provide a couple links to help individuals, kind of combat the nutritional quackery, or just be on top of, just stay on top of some of the latest information from, about our supplementation. So it's important to be aware of current trends, new products. And I think to, myself as a dietitian, like that's really important in my role, is to stay on top of that and be able to educate on the most current products and claims out there. So if, and for you all, if you want to keep up to date on scientific literature, that's obviously always, always a plus if you're really interested in something. But I think also to that point, it's really important to seek credible, reputable sources for this information. So, not trying to get all your information from like the TV or magazines or like your favorite Instagram influencer. So yeah, know your reputable sources. And it's really important that the manufacturers of certain supplements are not who you're going to for those reputable sources. So like the FDA, Center for Food Safety and Nutrition, is a great option. Consumer Lab is a great website to help evaluate these things. And then Quack Watch is also another one. So, so those are some good resources for you all. So I want to, let's see, you are screen sharing. How do I pause the share? So anyway, I do want to bring it back to our Oh no. Sorry guys. Pause, share. Stop. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Sorry, Andy. I mean, I don't have to make you front and center. But I did, so I just wanted to cover that because I think that's the big piece, is just realizing how often we're targeted in terms of supplement marketing. And everyone's trying to make a buck off of people, especially in the supplement industry. So what Andy and I were talking about before we started this recording was people are very quick to think about to go the supplementation route before anything else. Like, I just started working out, like what supplements should I use? And I think the biggest thing is that, no supplement is going to, is going to magically make your health goals come true. And I think it's really important that, if we had to give percentages to it, I'd say your nutrition is probably like 98%, maybe 99% what's most important. And, supplementations might affect that 1 to 2%. So I think it's really important to focus first on the big things that are taking up your intake. The supplement gets its name because it's a way of supplementing or filling in the cracks of certain things in your diet. So let's take protein powder, for example. That's a pretty typical, pretty popular supplement. But again, like, you shouldn't be getting all your protein intake from like a whey protein supplement or a plant-based protein supplement, because there's plenty of foods that, when you're eating real foods or whole foods, they're providing you with a lot more than just a single nutrient. Whereas oftentimes, like vitamins or protein powders, like we're extracting the protein, or we're extracting that vitamin B, that B12. But when you eat foods rich in B12 or foods that are rich in protein, you're actually getting lots of other nutrients as a part of that. And so you're better off from a whole health standpoint than taking that single supplement. And then, like I said, you're most likely just going to spend a lot of money on that and on those supplements and not really benefit a whole lot from it. So I think, like, your money and time would be most well spent on making sure, like, you're eating 3 meals a day, promoting, focusing on all the things we talked about with, like, the My Plate or Athlete's Plate recommendations, and just filling in the cracks as needed with supplementation. So again, I kind of wish wish we had more people in here other than you, Andy. I mean, I love that you're here, but it would be nice to kind of see what people had questions about with specific supplements. I know that, like, energy drinks are definitely a big, definitely something that's big at FTR, or at least, that caffeine. And I think an important thing to remember with, like, caffeine, pre-workouts, is if you have to rely on something to get you going in the morning or to help you perform a certain way in the workout, usually the need for something like that is actually exposing something that you need to work on from a nutritional standpoint, or something that needs attention from a health standpoint. So, like, if you are completely dependent upon caffeine in the morning to get yourself up out of bed and start your day and function properly, that could be something where, like, maybe that's exposing, like, a lack of sleep. Yeah, maybe, like, you're continuously only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and so you need that caffeine to get you up in the morning. And so again, like, okay, well, let's go to the root of the problem. Like, that's masking the caffeine, the coffee in the morning is probably masking the real issue, which is a lack of sleep. And so I think if you can strip away all the supplementation, or, like, caffeine, the energy drinks, the pre-workouts, like the powders, the capsules, and that's your baseline. That is giving you a lot of feedback and a lot of information about your current health status. And if you're okay with just masking those problems, which again, like in the short term, that could be a viable solution. But if you want to get to the root cause of it, I think it's really an important feedback and a piece of awareness for you to take in, like about your health and where you're at. So if you are super reliant on the caffeine, maybe you need to start prioritizing sleep and making sure that you get a certain amount of hours per night. Same with pre-workouts before your actual workout. I have no problem with pre-workout, but at the same time, if you need something to get yourself to have enough energy to complete your workout, well, that could be very much related to a lack of carbohydrate or lack of actual food or calorie intake before your workout to help you fuel yourself for the workout. So hopefully that makes sense. Like it's not necessarily the actual product itself. It's more of, okay, well, what are you trying to cover up, or what are you trying to mask? And again, if you've had a really late, had very minimal sleep one night because, you stayed up late, the baby was crying all night, or, you had to work late, you had to do something and you only got a couple hours. Okay, well, sure, maybe that warrants some caffeine the next day. But, if that's a continuous thing, I think it should be a really big wake up call and a way to evaluate or reevaluate some of the big things that might need addressing and changing in your everyday lifestyle. So I think that's the biggest thing is when it comes to this. I'm sure if everyone was here, we're asking about all these different supplements, I'd say that's the biggest thing for me is just, why are you taking this? Do you feel like it's necessary, or are you just trying to use it as like, additional edge? And then in that case, it's like, okay, well, is it high risk or not really? Is it high cost? And are there other things you could be spending your money on if you're, spending a bunch of money on supplements, but then complaining that, buying healthy, fresh foods are too expensive? Well, maybe your priorities are out of sorts, and maybe you need to reevaluate that, save the money from the supplements and use that towards your grocery budget for the week. Added sugars are another, area that I think that deserve a little bit of additional focus on there, especially when it comes to energy drinks. And, sometimes with protein powders and whatnot. I think personally, and this is a personal opinion for a lot of people, in terms of like 0-calorie sweeteners or artificial sweeteners, for me personally, I prefer, if I want something sweet, I will oftentimes, just have sugar with something, and I'll keep it to very low amounts. But, I'd rather choose those calories from actual sugar than, chemicals that are composing those artificial sweeteners. But there's not a lot of evidence that are against those 0-calorie sweeteners or artificial sweeteners. Some studies show that, like in rats and in animal studies, at very high amounts, at toxic levels, they can cause cancers and different adverse health effects in rats. But again, those doses are so high that it's a little bit challenging or you can't relate that to the human population. So I think, ultimately, again, like if we're talking just sugar and products with high sugar, it's kind of like that example. Like if you're drinking a bunch of, let's say, Pepsi or Coke, and there's a ton of sugar, obviously, in those drinks, that next step down would be to have the diet Pepsi, diet Coke. Arguably, again, for me, I would probably wean down on just the amount of the Coke or Pepsi, just for personal preference. And then, that next step down from there, if you did the real sugar version, the diet version, then it's like, okay, can we get into like some sparkling drinks or carbonated drinks that are giving me like that a similar taste, like it's something different than water, but without all the sugar. That's a side tangent, because obviously Coke is not, and Pepsi aren't supplements, but that's kind of like the idea with, if you're trying to wean off of very high sugar, like, I'm thinking energy drinks, honestly, for me. So like regular Red Bull, and then 0 sugar Red Bull, and then maybe And then maybe going to like something like BCAAs or branched chain amino acids to offer some sort of pick me up from a beverage standpoint, but without necessarily needing all the caffeine. So, and just going into caffeine in general, I think too, it can start this like pretty negative feedback loop because you're using caffeine to mask a bigger issue with your lack of sleep or or not recovering properly. And then when you rely on caffeine, it becomes habitual. It becomes something that your body's really used to. And then you need more caffeine to feel anything from it. And then that caffeine distribution gets delayed or gets spread out more and more and more throughout your day. Before you know it, you're consuming caffeine after into the mid-afternoon. And then you can't sleep as well from it because you've been overly caffeinated. And so you're not sleeping well. So then the next day you have to consume even more caffeine to feel anything. So it can easily become this really negative cycle and cause this negative feedback system that can get you further and further and further away from the end goal or the ultimate goal, which I would imagine for many people is good health. So those are a couple key points I wanted to point out with supplements. Andy, I wanted to ask you, my friend, if I don't know if you can hear me, Andy. Can you hear me? I didn't know if you had any like specific questions with like when it comes to supplements, and you're the golden boy here right now since it's just you, but anything that like you have specific questions on, or are there any supplements that you really like to use that you want to know more about, or is this good information for you?
You know, I guess it's mostly, I just like learning more. I actually worked in the supplement industry quite a bit. I worked with GNC and then also supplementing.com. And here's another thing that just a warning. They actually told you when I was before my interview, a couple of people that worked there, they told me don't tell them that you study nutrition. At the time I was really into fitness and nutrition. They would prefer that you were really ignorant and knew nothing, because then they could just tell you exactly what to tell the customers. And so there's, I guess, another kind of warning, because if you actually even looked at the labels and you saw some of them with hydrogenated oils and certain things like that you'd be like, but that's a side note, just kind of a warning.
Yeah, it's personal experience.
What I do now, I mean, you talk about health always being number one. So from what I've seen, what I take has been kind of recommended by like guys that I follow and kind of mentors. Like Ben Greenfield is a big one. I follow Precision Nutrition quite a bit. Examine.com has a good amount of research articles. Tim Ferriss. But first of all, ones that like they'll talk about, like you said, if you are doing everything else, then think about adding this.
Right.
Because if they're talking about it before then it's going to be too good to be true. And you got to think also, but anyways, so what I've always, I guess, kind of heard, and I don't mean to be on a tangent because you're the teacher.
Oh, no. I
only take two things. I'm going to take fish oil and vitamin D just because of my health, and especially in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And especially just the convenience of, I have, so many of us have high omega-6 diets. And then there's multiple things that come into part for me now. One is, I don't know how deficient I was for so many years because of being an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, when it comes to supplements, like you mentioned, caffeine, I have to be very careful because, like so many of us, I have a very addictive personality. So I'm not by any means saying caffeine or supplements are as addictive as alcohol and drugs, but at the same time, if I have to have it, well, then it's a problem.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And that's
um,
that's a big sticking point, right? Is just like evaluate your reliance upon us on that certain supplement or food item or whatever, and really think about, like, you shouldn't, if you're consuming a well-rounded diet, it shouldn't be overly laden with one thing or another. Like the importance of that is that it's that there's balance among so many different foods and macronutrients and micronutrients. And so yeah, exactly what you're saying. If you feel like you're have an unhealthy dependence on a certain item, well then that might be something to really evaluate and step back from and see, okay, well, what is this masking? Kind of like what we're talking about with the sleep.
yeah. Um, what I take now, other than the fish oil and vitamin D, um, I guess it kind of depends on everyone's preference. I feel better during the day when I eat lightly, but I'm an extremely hard gainer. It's really hard for me to put on muscle. So just convenience wise, I do take protein and BCAAs throughout the day just to keep those levels up, even when I'm not eating tons. Because personally, I feel better unless I work out in the morning. I just feel better energy wise eating lightly. Um,
Maybe you're more frequent, like, or smaller meals throughout the day kind of person.
yeah. And honestly, I really enjoy drinking like BCAA drinks. I really enjoy like certain energy drinks. So it's not one of those where I really enjoy it. I don't know if it's just the dependence on have to be drinking something,
Mm.
which could be a problem. But when we're talking about kind of substitution, I think about that is I try to, so instead of the Monster, maybe I'm having a Fit Aid.
Right. Yeah.
So if I really do enjoy it, if it really does help me relax, and I am a little uneasy not having anything at all, I guess it's more about what's the better choice.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really good point about like just feeling almost the need for something to drink. Because if that's the case, if you need a little carbonation or you need a little something, like we're fortunate that this day and age, maybe we're not, maybe it's a double-edged sword, but we have the option to, if a BCAA drink versus an energy drink, if both will do the same thing for you, like you just need something different, a taste, a carbonation, something to be sipping on, well then by all means, like that's where that risk, that cost benefit kind of comes into play. It's like, okay, well, the reality of BCAAs, branched chain amino acids, those are just 3 of the 9 essential amino acids that we need, as part of our protein intake. So the risk of consuming that, maybe there's a little bit of caffeine in there, maybe not. You can get BCAAs with both. Versus a highly caffeinated energy drink beverage. If both are doing the same thing, find something that choose the option that's going to have less risk, less less implications on your health or hyperactivity or sleep conditions. So yeah, I'm with you there. And I think a lot of people just enjoy drinking something, like you said. So
Yeah.
figuring out a good combination of things that aren't going to deter you from, just finding a good healthy state of within your body, and not trying to add caffeine or stimulants when it's not necessary, because we do become desensitized to those over time, and then the need for more and more and more just increases. So good point. Anything else that you wanted to contribute or say or tell since it's just me and you want to, if anyone's watching this later, anything else that you think is important while we're on the supplement topic?
Um, I mean, um, yeah, you've kind of gone over them. There's certain things that I stay away from just because my goals, but also because of the risk. So there's certain pre-workouts. I know something that's really popular, like fat burners. I get really nervous with those just because of my heart rate going up.
Mhm.
Um, and then just because of my goals. Of course, I always want to lose as much fat as possible, but
Yeah. But that's where we get into that too good to be true. Like it's
yeah,
probabilistic results. There's no one pill. There's no one magic supplement that's gonna cause
yeah.
fat. So yeah, those most. I think it's safe to say almost all fat burners are going to be ineffective for those types of quick weight loss. Instead, they'll do a lot of damage for long periods of time on your liver and your kidneys. So it's just important to that's where that risk benefit analysis or ratio or scale goes way up in the risk department. And again, you're not nothing. If there was something that claimed like actually lived up to its claim in terms of success, then there'd be weight wouldn't be, obesity wouldn't be an issue. So
The supplements I take, one is just because my goals, two is just because I really enjoy taking them. But I do know that, like, it was a couple weeks ago, I believe it was Maggie, maybe. If it wasn't, I apologize if she watches this later. But she mentioned probiotics, the
yeah.
question about that. I don't know how common that is with people wanting to know that. I personally don't take any because it's more I try to research what can I eat that will help my gut health more, whether it's with acidophilus or apple cider vinegar, things like that.
Mhm.
So it's not something that I enjoy taking, so I'll try to get it from my food. But I just know that had been asked in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And I think I told Maggie this, but I do think when it comes to probiotics, like again, that's an area where two things. It's an area where you can spend a lot of money. There's especially if you're in the refrigerated section at Whole Foods, it's almost absurd how expensive some of those like live probiotics are. And
Those drinks, just one of them's like $5.
yeah. So
30.
I mean, but then that's where you get so like that was I was talking about like the refrigerated probiotic supplements, but then
Oh,
but now there's kombucha, there's
yeah,
there's fermented I wouldn't call them supplements, they're just beverages that
yeah.
are going to provide you with those probiotics as well. Now it's at a smaller scale, and like you said, yeah, they're expensive for drinks, but if you get one kombucha and it lasts you the whole week or like 7 days,
Oh, yeah.
a little bit each, it's like, well, you're spending a lot less money on that as a food option than you are like the actual supplement. And then you get into like actual fermented foods like kimchi, yogurt obviously is naturally high in probiotics. So again, most of the essential
Sauerkraut.
things that we need, yes, sauerkraut, most of the essential things that we need are we can obtain through the diet. Like again, that 98-99% should be attainable from the foods we eat without having to supplement. So that should always be your first and foremost um, focus. And I think if you're reversing that order, like you talked about, Andy, initially, if you're going supplements first when your entire nutrition and is all out of whack, like you need to be spending your priority on your food intake. And then once that's dialed down and you can have a true assessment of where you're at, then it might be worthwhile looking into any type of supplementation. But yeah, I'm with you on like the protein supplementation. That's probably the main supplement I take on a regular basis because I have trouble, especially when I'm on the go a lot and it's very convenient to have proteins
Yeah.
powder times. I will, I'll supplement my protein intake with some sort of like protein powder. But again, it's not something that I'm going to consume 3 times a day to try to hit my protein goal. It might be like one shake or add it to a certain food, maybe at breakfast, and starting with my yogurt to like get a little bit higher protein. But it's the supplement to your nutrition, not trying to take over as the focal point. So yeah. And again, like we'll continue. So this is, like I said, the last of our 6-part series for the nutrition class or for the wellness challenge. But I would love to do this. I'm thinking at least on a monthly basis, have one night a month where, and then, the gym will be back and up and running. So I'd like to do this at least once a month. and kind of just open up the floor to certain topics. We could get more hands-on in the kitchen and all that good stuff. But Andy, I appreciate you being here, my friend. Let's just finish with gratitude. And yeah, what's one thing you're grateful for today?
You know, I'm so grateful for like the strength of the people around me. For example, there was so much positivity when the gym shut down, and instead of so many people bummers, well, yeah, it's a bummer, but instead of people being really negative, it's, hey, let's connect. Hey, we can do this. We can do this. So just this community of always seeing the positive, and we're going to go through hard times and we're going to have obstacles, but to know that there's so much strength among us to keep looking for the positives.
Absolutely.
So.
I love that. And I agree with you. I've definitely felt that this week too, and in my conversations with individuals. I'm really grateful for how much support, structure,
Yeah, go play.
to, like, it's weird. I mean, because it's been over 10 days since I've been out of the gym, I just didn't realize how much like structure and emotional support and physical support that I got from a Fit to Recover. So you don't really realize how good you have it, or how important that is, until it's taken away from you. And unfortunately, we know, like, we have a timeline. It's, okay, it's 10 days. Whereas, back when COVID was kind of in its height, everyone had to, like, that was indefinite. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna be running Zoom classes, and it might be, who knows how long we're gonna have to do this for. So I'm just grateful that we have a start and an end to the quarantine at FDR, and that we can be back all together, resuming classes on Friday. So I look forward to that. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to kickstart, this nutrition series. And I hope people have enjoyed it. And I appreciate you being here, Andy, and sticking through for this hour. And I look forward to doing more of these in the upcoming months, and trying to get like a little bit more traction on the nutrition side of things, and hopefully getting people to really be paying attention to their health, and using the resources that we have at FTR. So I appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks so much, Corinna. I apologize to anyone watching if they wanted more questions. So
I think we
or better questions.
Well, that was probably on them for not being present, but I'm glad you could be here. I really appreciate that. And yeah, if anyone, of course, if you have any questions, I'm always available at FTR. And I'm always can answer any questions for you, even set up one-on-one. So whatever you need.
I will.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a great night.